Good morning, you're watching A News. I'm Dilek Tuna. These are the headlines for the hour. Ukraine allies met in Paris to discuss new aid, security issues and sanctions against Russia. All passengers are accounted for after a tourist submarine sank off Egypt's Red Sea resort city of Hurghada, killing 6 Russian tourists. The European Union's Central Asia 20th ministerial meeting was held in Turkmenistan. Ukraine allies met in Paris to discuss new aid, security issues and sanctions against Russia. France has pledged $2.1 billion in military aid to Ukraine after the third summit, which France and Britain have called the Coalition of the Willing.
Well, Emmanuel Macron, the French president, hosted on Thursday, here in the French capital, another Ukraine support summit with the leaders of some 30 countries, the Secretary General of NATO, the President of the European Commission, also in attendance in the Elysee Palace for discussions about long-term security guarantees for Ukraine, the ongoing support of the Ukrainian armed forces, humanitarian and financial assistance to Kiev, also discussions about these proposed ceasefires, how to implement them, how to extend them. We did also hear at the closing news conference on Thursday from Emmanuel Macron speaking about sanctions on Russia, saying it was too early to ease those because there have been some discussions that Russia would like to see a lifting of some of the sanctions that have been imposed upon it in return for complying with the proposed Black Sea ceasefire. The Ukrainian president was here for the Thursday summit, Volodymyr Zelensky, saying, quote, there should not be lifting of any kind of sanctions until Russia stops this war. More packages of sanctions are in fact important. Emmanuel Macron also spoke about this so-called reassurance force that would have as its main objective dissuading any future Russian aggression, any future Russian incursions into Ukraine once again. That's been a key proposal from the United Kingdom and from France, and that was one of the key ambitions on the table at the Thursday summit. Further discussions about how to develop this force. It's not an idea that has unanimous support among all of Ukraine's Western allies. Notably, Italy are reticent about the idea of sending thousands of foreign troops into Ukraine after any peace deal is signed. But France and Britain are supportive of the plan. They want to press on with the plan, and in fact announced on Thursday the next stage will be Britain and France sending military advisors and chiefs of the defence staff to Ukraine in the coming days to work with the Ukrainian armed forces to make sure they're in the strongest possible position. But also there will be a secondary objective of those military advisors. They'll be looking at what format is required in terms of, quote, the number of soldiers, what equipment, what hardware is required in order to respond to future Russian aggression. So London and Paris are pressing on with trying to design the capacities of what this so-called reassurance or peacekeeping force would look like. Ross Cullen, A News in Paris.
Fresh US airstrikes have hit Yemen's capital Sana'a and other areas, with explosions seen early Friday morning. Houthi reports that key infrastructure was destroyed, including the international airport and an army command post. It also condemned the attacks as US aggression as tensions escalate. The US military has intensified strikes since the 15th of March. It's in retaliation to Houthi airstrikes on shipping in the Red Sea, which began in November 2023 after the Israel-Hamas war started. After US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth shared sensitive information about a US airstrike in Yemen through a messaging app, the Democrats are now demanding his resignation. The leak has raised security concerns worsened by the exposure of personal data from top Washington officials online.
Our military systems, correct?
Democrats are intensifying calls for US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to resign after it was revealed that he shared sensitive information about a US airstrike operation in Yemen via a messaging app. The leak, revealed in a report by Jeffrey Goldberg in The Atlantic, showed Hegseth using the encrypted Signal app to discuss military airstrikes. He shared details with other senior officials in the Trump administration. These discussions, which included the precise timing, weapons and aircraft to be used, were held just hours before the planned strikes on March 15th. Goldberg's report also revealed that he was inadvertently added to the group chat by National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. The chat included key Trump administration figures like Vice President J.D. Vance, Hegseth, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, raising concerns over potential security risks. Democrats are calling for Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's resignation after a leak raised security concerns, with warnings it could endanger U.S. personnel. In addition to the airstrike leak, a separate report by Der Spiegel revealed that personal data, including phone numbers and email addresses of top Trump administration officials, had been exposed online. The data breach added to the growing scandal, prompting further criticism and calls for accountability. While President Donald Trump defended the administration and insisted that no classified information was compromised, the controversy continues to swirl. An internal review is underway, with National Security Advisor Mike Waltz acknowledging the embarrassment caused by the leak, but also downplaying its significance. Meanwhile, Defense Secretary Hegseth dismissed the allegations, accusing Goldberg of spreading misinformation and defending the airstrike campaign as vital for maintaining regional security.
Iranian media has released a video of an underground missile city. It's amid tensions between Iran and the US over the Iranian-backed Houthis.
Iran has showcased an underground missile city with high-powered weaponry. The footage has been released amid tensions with the US. It shows the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces and Islamic Revolution Guard Corps Aerospace Force commander driving through the facility in a car. Experts say Iran is showing its power of strength.
And this underground missile site, as video footages show, is packed with hundreds of medium-range ballistic missiles of Hajj Qasem, Emad, Qadr, Sijil. These missiles are mostly medium-range, with an operational range of 1,500 up to 2,500 kilometers. They have multiple warheads, and each one weighing about 500 kilograms. And in fact, Iran showed this as a sort of show of strength and its deterrence power.
It's a third underground missile city that's been unveiled by the Iranian media as US President Donald Trump's ultimatum to Iran to give up on its nuclear program almost reaches its deadline. Earlier this month, Trump said he sent a letter to Iran's leadership proposing talks on Iran's nuclear program and warning of possible military action if Tehran refused. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, rejected the proposal, calling the US a bully.
Russia has launched a new nuclear-powered submarine equipped with advanced hypersonic missiles. President Vladimir Putin personally authorized the launch via a video link from Murmansk. The submarine, named Perm, is the first of its kind to be equipped with Zircon missiles as a standard feature. These nuclear-capable hypersonic cruise missiles can travel at several times the speed of sound, making them difficult to intercept. Perm is the sixth vessel in Russia's Yasin-class submarine built at the Sevmash shipyard. In a significant shift, Afghanistan is no longer listed as a national security threat in the US intelligence community's 2025 annual threat assessment. This change, following recent developments in US-Taliban relations, raises questions about Washington's evolving approach to the country. Tamim Bahis has more from Kabul, Afghanistan.
For the first time in recent years, Afghanistan is no longer listed as a threat to US national security in the 2025 Annual Threat Assessment Report by the US intelligence community. This is a significant shift, especially considering that for over 2 decades, these reports consistently highlighted terrorism and instability in Afghanistan as major concerns. Since the 9/11 attacks, Afghanistan has been central to US security policy. The Office of the Director of Intelligence has repeatedly identified the country as a key concern, warning about threats posed by terrorist groups operating here. However, this year's omission has caught the attention of analysts, with many interpreting it as a possible change in Washington's approach to Afghanistan. Recent events further suggest a shift in US-Taliban relations. A News recently reported on a high-level US delegation's rare visit to Kabul. During this visit, the Taliban released an American prisoner as a goodwill gesture to President Donald Trump. Additionally, the US has lifted bounties on senior Taliban members, another indication that relation between the two sides may be evolving. For decades, Afghanistan has been a focal point of US national security concerns. Its removal from this year's threat assessment is not just a bureaucratic change. It's a major development with potentially far-reaching consequences for regional stability and the future of US engagement with the Taliban. This is Tamim Bahiz in Kabul for A News.
More countries are reacting to US President Donald Trump's 25% tariff increase on imported vehicles, set to take effect next week. French President Emmanuel Macron says the move is a waste of time, adding it would cause more defensive actions from European leaders. South Korea says it's planning an emergency response, and Brazil's president warns the tax hikes could lead to inflation.
With a 2.5% base, which is
US President Donald Trump's plan to impose steep 25% tariffs on imported vehicles from next week is facing strong international opposition. He says the move is to boost domestic manufacturers. French President Emmanuel Macron says the decision will harm both US and European economies.
I think planned tariffs by US President Donald Trump is not a good idea. I've said this to President Trump. I told him yesterday, and I will keep telling him. At a moment when we can see well, the markets in the United States do not consider this a good economic policy. At a moment when President Trump rightly is asking Europeans to make more defense efforts to ensure their own security, saying, "It's up to you to do this, we should not have to pay for you." It's not the time to impose tariffs on us, so it's not coherent.
South Korea's Industry Minister Ahn Duk-gun says the tariffs will impact not just car makers but also suppliers.
About 50% of our automobile exports go to the United States, so there are concerns about significant damage to the auto industry. The difficulties will be especially severe for not only the finished car manufacturers, but also the parts suppliers. Global uncertainties are growing, but South Korean auto companies will not be fighting alone.
Brazil's President Lula warns of economic consequences and plans to challenge the move at the World Trade Organization.
I believe that President Trump, as President of the United States, has the right to make decisions within the United States. What he needs to do is to consider the consequences of these decisions. What will be the effect of this decision on the United States? Honestly, if he is thinking about making this decision to tax everything that the United States imports, I think it will be detrimental to the United States. It will raise the prices of goods and could lead to inflation that he hasn't yet realized.
The US imported roughly 8 million cars last year, accounting for about $240 billion in trade and roughly half of overall sales. Analysts estimate that the cost of a car could rise significantly, with 25% tariffs on parts from Mexico and Canada alone, adding up to $4,000 to $10,000.
Egypt's Red Sea Governor General Amer Hanafi has visited the injured after a tourist submarine accident off Hurghada. 6 Russian tourists lost their lives while 39 others were rescued. Authorities say no passengers or crew remain missing.
All passengers are accounted for after a tourist submarine sank off Egypt's Red Sea resort city of Hurghada on Thursday. The underwater vessel was carrying 45 Russian tourists along with crew members when it went down. 6 Russians lost their lives and 39 people were rescued. The injured were taken to local hospitals and the majority of survivors returned to their hotels. Egypt's Red Sea Governor, General Amer Hanafi, visited those in hospital. The Sinbad submarine was equipped with large portholes for passengers to observe coral reefs and marine life, according to its company website. It was capable of diving up to 25 metres below the surface. The Red Sea plays a crucial role in Egypt's tourism sector, particularly for Russian visitors. However, maritime accidents are not uncommon. In November, a tourist boat capsized off the Egyptian coast, killing 4 people. Similar incidents have raised concerns about safety measures in the region's popular diving and sightseeing activities.
Financial prosecutors have requested a 7-year prison sentence and a €300,000 fine for former French President Nicolas Sarkozy over the alleged Libyan financing of his successful 2007 presidential campaign. He's been on trial since January and is accused of having received millions of euros in illegal financing from Libya's late strongman Muammar Gaddafi. Prosecutors also called for Sarkozy to be banned from holding office for 5 years. He has denied any wrongdoing. His former aides are also facing prison time and fines. Sarkozy has been embroiled in several legal battles since leaving office in 2012. French prosecutors have recommended an 18-month suspended sentence for actor Gérard Depardieu, along with a €20,000 fine. The 76-year-old denies sexually assaulting 2 women on a film set in 2021. On the 3rd day in court, Depardieu admitted to grabbing one of the plaintiffs by the hips and said he didn't consider that placing a hand on a person's buttocks was sexual assault. His lawyer claims the case is built on false accusations and biased investigations. Prosecutors, however, insist there is enough evidence to justify the suspended sentence and fine. Diplomats from Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan came together for the 20th European Union Central Asia Ministerial Meeting in Ashgabat. They discussed regional priorities such as trade, security and green energy. The gathering also served to prepare for the upcoming EU Central Asia Summit in Samarkand, Uzbekistan next week.
The 20th European Union Central Asia Ministerial Meeting has taken place in Ashgabat, Turkmenistan. The meeting, hosted by Turkmenistan's Foreign Minister Rashid Meredov, brought together top diplomats from Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan and the European Union. Turkmenistan's Foreign Minister says the gathering is a constructive way to develop relationships.
Integrated cooperation between Central Asia and the European Union is one of the most important strategic vectors of development in Eurasia. Objectively, it creates conditions for better understanding on the basis of mutual respect and equality.
EU's Foreign Affairs representative, Kaja Kallas, says building on relationships is key for further successful developments.
And I'm also happy that we will have the leaders level summit already next week. I think this is extremely important that this happens this time. It will be an important milestone in our relationship, and we attach great importance to the success of this summit. And we are here to prepare this successful summit, so I look forward to the cooperation in this regard.
The agenda covered a broad range of regional priorities, from trade, investment and transport to security, green energy, education and innovation. The impact of the situations in Afghanistan and Ukraine on the region were also a key topic. The ministers reviewed progress on the EU Central Asia Enhanced Cooperation Roadmap to 2030, focusing on deepening political dialogue, boosting economic ties, and expanding cooperation in energy, communications, and public diplomacy. Security concerns were high on the list, with discussions on combating violent extremism, cyber threats, disinformation, human trafficking, and border protection. The meeting also served as a platform to coordinate efforts ahead of the first ever EU Central Asia Summit, set for the 3rd and 4th of April next week in Samarkand, Uzbekistan.
Armenia's parliament has recently adopted a bill on launching the country's accession process to the European Union. which doesn't mean the official beginning of the country's application to join the EU, being more of a symbolic nature. Armenia also has close ties with Iran. Why is it so important for Armenia to be seen as aspiring to join the EU? We spoke to an expert journalist earlier from Portugal, Leo Nidio Ferreira.
For Armenia, being seen as a candidate to the European Union is something that could play in her favor. Obviously, there is also some interest in Europe in closer ties with Armenia. I remember that the European Parliament last year voted in favor of improving the relations with Armenia, mentioning the cultural ties between Europe and this country of the South Caucasus, and especially a country like France is clearly in favor of being in closer relation with Armenia, and also seeing this as a way to, in the second way, to decrease the Russian sphere of influence in the region. Then, in my opinion, both Armenia and the European Union have interest in this candidacy. Obviously, it's only a formality. The session is not possible in the near future. It's obvious that because we look to countries as Moldova or Georgia, and obviously they are not as a priority to a session. And for Armenia, this is more a symbolic move that shows from the government of Yerevan a desire of foster relations, close ties with the European Union.
That's the world news for the hour. Stay tuned on A News for more and have a wonderful morning.